Welcome to today's HealthLine webinar from the American Association of Kidney Patients, titled Kidney Disease Impact on Employment: Essential Tips for Re-entering the Workforce or Advancing Your Career. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jerome Bailey, and I am AAKP's Director of Patient Engagement and Advocacy. In 2019, AAKP declared the coming decade the decade of the kidney. We did this to put a spotlight on unmet patient needs and the strategic importance of pushing forward new care innovations for both patients and kidney professionals. During the decade of the kidney, we are also working to remind the nation that kidney disease is both a healthcare and workforce issue that impacts both lives and livelihoods. For many, re entering the job market or learning new skills after a prolonged illness can be challenging. AKP understands the importance of providing resources to ease this journey, especially for kidney patients and U.S. military veterans impacted by kidney disease. That is why, for the past 8 years, AAKP has partnered with nationally recognized employment specialists, Career Eco, and Idealist. Together, AAKP, Career Eco, and Idealist are connecting the patient community with meaningful full-time and part-time job opportunities that offer both a sense of purpose and financial stability while managing the demands of kidney care. Today, we're here to offer support, practical strategies, and insights to help you successfully transition back into the workforce. We're honored to have our partners at idealist.org joining us for this event, and together we're committed to supporting each of you on this path. As the oldest and largest fully independent patient-led kidney patient organization in the U.S., AAKP is proud to host our webinar series as a service to our fellow kidney patients, family members and care partners, healthcare professionals, researchers, and policymakers. AAKP HealthLine and HealthLine Innovative Webinars fall under our Center for Patient Research and Education. We believe patient and care partner education is an integral part of an individual's treatment. And to that end, AAKP is a champion for full patient care choice, the protection of the doctor-patient relationship, and the elimination of artificial barriers and government determinants of health that impede patient care choice and access to available treatment options. An estimated 10% of U.S. adults have some degree of chronic kidney disease, and many in the early stages continue to thrive in the workforce. CKD presents unique challenges for those who need and want to work, but these challenges are surmountable. No patient should feel they must step away from their job or pause their ambitions prematurely unless it is a clear medical necessity. To open today's program, I'm honored to introduce AAKP's Chair of Policy and Global Affairs, Paul Conway. Paul is a lifelong champion of patient-centered care and shared decision-making in kidney research. As a kidney disease patient himself for 46 years and a 27-year transplant recipient, he has been recognized for his advocacy work with several national awards, including the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award in 2022. Paul has served in 4 U.S. presidential administrations, including as Chief of Staff for the U.S. Department of Labor. He has served on multiple federal and nonprofit committees and boards related to kidney health, including as chair of the FDA's Patient Engagement Advisory Committee, the American Board of Internal Medicine Nephrology Specialty Board, and the National Institutes of Health Kidney Precision Medicine Project. In preparation for today's webinar, AAKP conducted an independent flash survey through our Center for Patient Research and Education to get a sense of the intricate challenges patients face when trying to hold onto their job or transition back into the workforce while still managing a chronic illness. Paul is here to share key findings from the survey. Paul, I hand the program over to you.
Thank you very much, Jerome. And I hope folks find this very interesting. Sometimes there's a stereotype about kidney patients, which is simply that we're focused on going to the doctors, taking our medicines, and trying to manage just our disease instead of living life. In reality, we all know that we live our lives and we try to make certain that it doesn't pivot around kidney disease, that it's something that we manage in addition to those of us who can work part-time or full-time, our careers and our livelihoods. That's why I think it's very important to have this webinar today and the hard work that our staff, like Jerome, have done to bring together allies that can address some of the issues about employment and unemployment that kidney patients have. You know, if you're a kidney patient, you understand that oftentimes the prescription or therapy you're given for kidney failure or for chronic kidney disease can impact your life. And that's why we're very determined to raise issues related to disability, dependency, and despair, because the whole person here is at stake when you have kidney disease, including your ability to keep working. In this slide, we're showing whether or not somebody's employed or not, what motivates them to actually stay in the workforce. And you can see, obviously, 3/4 of them, it's to earn an income. But a very strong number is the feeling of being productive, and falling right behind that is a sense of accomplishment and contributing to society. These are key factors that we don't think fit on the prescription pad or that some medical professionals think about. What's motivating people to stay in the arena of life, contributing to society, accomplishing, and being productive, in addition to the joy that you get from coworkers sometimes, the ability to save for retirement, and being able to take care of your family. But these are important aspects of human life that many times don't fit into the typical model of clinical decision making. We think that policymakers should keep these items in mind when they're dealing with kidney patients. So we asked folks, obviously we're 4 years post-peak of COVID, how they prefer to work. And about 40% said they prefer to work remotely. About another 40% prefer hybrid, online and in the workplace. And about 23% prefer to work in an office. We're not surprised by these numbers, but it does inform the choices and opportunities that kidney patients consider, not just now, but probably going into the future, since the status quo of work has changed. And we asked those who are currently employed or not, as kidney patients, what concerns they have about in-person employment. And I think this is a very important slide for employers to understand, as well as friends and loved ones of kidney patients. Being exposed to COVID is an ongoing concern for those who are immunocompromised and immunosuppressed. And I'm talking here about dialysis patients and kidney transplant patients. We're a very, very well educated group of people about the risks that we face, and that is a key factor that we consider on employment issues. Possibility of needing time off, having to work with your employer or your manager due to your health issues. That's another major concern. And about a third of them feel they just won't be as productive as members of a work team. And you have a very small minority who feel like they might receive a preferential treatment or be called out with undue attention for having that condition, even if it's a benign or helpful type of thing. People are concerned about that. We asked, in terms of the kidney disease diagnosis, what would it do to impact current status, unemployment, leave? 37% indicated that it did. 63% said that it didn't. This is important because this webinar is very focused on that 37% of the people that are being impacted by a kidney disease diagnosis. And here this number comes up again. People who find it difficult to find employment opportunities due to kidney failure. So about 10% are unsure, 63% said no, and 27% said yes. So if you take a look at those who indicated that kidney disease does actually impact their ability to find employment opportunities, both those who are saying yes proactively and those who are just not sure, that's 37% of patients. Again, this is a number that we're trying to get to the bottom of, and these are the people that we think need the most help in staying in part-time or full-time jobs of their choosing in a career path of their interest. And so we asked those folks who had experienced an impact on their employment, what exactly was it? And this is where we start to unpack that small group of about 40% of the people that are impacted. Loss of job, 41%. Reduction in their flexibility in work hours, 29%. Had to take a leave of absence, about a quarter of the folks. The transitioning to remote work, and then other. But you can see that for those people who are impacted, it impacts in very profound ways, including job loss. That's probably the most important thing to keep in mind. For that group of patients that are impacted, job loss hits nearly half of them. And so we asked kidney patients if they need special accommodations or modifications where they work for those who have kidney failure. 85% said no, only 15% said yes. This is important for us and for employers to understand because, again, sometimes there's a perception of kidney patients or dialysis patients that, it's very difficult to try to bring them in on a work team or into a employment situation. And we found that most patients are saying that's not correct. We think this is an educational moment for employers. Based on that data, what you see here is you see a group of people who are very interested in working, not simply in order to get a paycheck, but they want to work to feel as though they're accomplishing something, they're contributing something, and they're active members of society. That's why we firmly believe that policies that only address kidney disease or chronic kidney disease are not enough. You have to address the concerns of the whole person. I've had the benefit of having worked at the U.S. Department of Labor, and there's an office there called the Office of Disability Employment Policy, where they take a look at folks who sometimes have the biggest challenges staying employed, not because they don't want to, but because people don't reach out to them and create opportunities. And so with Idealist and Career Echo, the reason why we partnered with them is these professionals have great experience looking for opportunities and helping create opportunities to connect people with work part-time and full-time. So we're very pleased with the webinar today. We hope it adds to some of the optimism and hope that many patients have and gives you a pathway forward for other options to seek part-time or full-time employment wherever you are, either remote or in a hybrid situation. So let me go ahead and pass this back over to Jerome and thank everyone who participated in the survey. It's informative, not just for patients, but also for policymakers, professionals, and the media. Thanks, Jerome.
No problem, Paul. Thank you, Paul. AAKP is committed to promoting patient-centered care by offering a wide range of treatment options for individuals with kidney disease. Our national strategy focuses on expanding access to home dialysis therapies and transplantation, as well as advancing the development of artificial implantable and wearable organs and research into xenotransplantation. These innovations empower patients to choose treatments that align with their goals of maintaining a fulfilling lifestyle, pursuing a job or career advancement, securing financial stability, and making meaningful contributions to society without relying on disability income. Now, let's introduce our first speaker, Alexis Perota. As the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at Idealist, Alexis strategizes, creates, and oversees the written and branded related content. As a lifelong nonprofit professional, she loves that idealist.org can offer the tools and resources diverse audiences need in order to grow in their nonprofit careers, make an impact in their own community, or transition into the sector. Alexis holds a bachelor's degree as well as a Master of Public Administration degree and is currently pursuing a graduate certificate and exploring one of her favorite areas, marine conservation. Alexis feels strongly that our educational journeys don't need to end in employment. And in fact, for many of us, that can signal a new beginning. Alexis, thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to turn the presentation over to you.
Hi, Jerome. Thank you so much for having me here with AAKP. I'm really excited to dig into the ins and outs of the social impact job search in a way that's really specific and hopefully very valuable for your audience. So just a little bit more about me. Again, I'm Alexis Perata. I'm the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at Idealist. I've been at Idealist for over 7 years, actually about 7.5 years now. I'm a lifelong social impact professional, and I am also an active pro bono professional. So just a little bit of an overview of what I'd like to talk about today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Idealist, I wanted to give a quick overview of what Idealist is all about. Then I wanted to dive into social impact careers by the numbers, so I brought along some data with me. Then we're going to get into some myths and tips about working in the nonprofit sector, cover letters, resumes, and remote interview tips. And then finally, some other really exciting, helpful tools that we have at Idealist for your social impact job search. So we'll start with a quick introduction. What is Idealist? So you may know us as a social impact job and internship listings board. We have opportunities for action, volunteer opportunities. We also have a really cool product called the Idealist Salary Explorer. It's pretty new, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a bit. We have a career advice blog. And then we have the Idealist Grad School Fair. That's an annual grad school fair for social impact prospective students. And then we have Idealist Days, and I will also share a little bit more about that later. But we have, to date, connected over 150,000 organizations with tens of millions of people and posted over 1 million social impact jobs and hundreds of thousands of internships and volunteer opportunities. As far as our career advice resources, we've posted over 1,700 free tools and templates and resources for you all to use on your social impact job search. So I wanted to start before diving in, just to look at, take a minute to look at a few numbers that I brought along. So the state of social impact hiring as of actually a few days ago, I have some fresh data. So currently, or as of May 13th, 2024, on Idealist, we had live 655 remote positions, 1,657 hybrid positions, and 324 part-time positions. We also have 46 remote internships, 1,376 remote volunteer opportunities, 58 hybrid internships, hybrid as far as location is concerned, 474 hybrid volunteer opportunities, 93 part-time internships, and 3,839 volunteer opportunities. I understand that remote, hybrid, and part-time are all very important to this particular audience, so I'm really excited to share that these roles are out there and they're live on Idealist as we speak. So next, I want to jump into what it really means to work in the social impact sector. So to start, I wanted to share a few nonprofit myths with you. So the first one, you can't earn a comfortable living in the nonprofit sector. This is false. The truth is most nonprofits do rely on volunteers in addition to paid staff. The term nonprofit does not mean that nonprofit professionals don't earn a salary and sometimes even a bonus, raises, etc. Nonprofit just refers to the 501c tax code in the United States. Next is there is no upward mobility. So working in the nonprofit sector sometimes can be considered taking a break from the real world, with the implied assumption that this is not an option to spend a lifetime doing this work. In reality, the nonprofit sector provides many people with a lifetime of exciting and challenging work. Nonprofits also tend to offer young people more leadership opportunities than other sectors. In 2022, nonprofit employees actually made up 6.5% of the American workforce. So that's a pretty significant chunk. Next, everyone that works in the nonprofit sector is nice. So sure, most people who work in the sector absolutely care about making the world a better place, but so do plenty of people who don't work in the sector. So don't be surprised if you encounter difficult personalities, big egos, and office politics. Nonprofit organizations are largely inefficient. So nonprofit organizations do not usually have a clear bottom line or profit margins necessarily, although sometimes they do. But serving a human or environmental need really makes success and efficiency much more difficult to measure. However, that doesn't mean that they're inherently inefficient, just tough to measure. And if you're interested in program analysis or evaluation, the nonprofit sector can be a great place for you. Nonprofit organizations only do direct service work. While some organizations that are probably more recognizable as nonprofits, so soup kitchens, mentoring programs, etc., they'll offer direct service programming. Many nonprofit professionals hold titles like accountant, programmer, salesperson, HR professional, executive, and then many more are researchers and advocates for certain issues or support the work of direct service organizations, but not necessarily out in the field. Finally, I love volunteering, so why not? Volunteers are often shielded from the organizational and financial challenges that paid employees of an organization may have to contend with. So, and that's not to say anything about occasional burnout faced by folks who've spent more time working in the field. Generally, volunteering for an organization is a very different experience from paid employment. So if you're interested in joining the nonprofit sector, I have a few suggestions, especially if you're new to the sector. So the first thing I would suggest is creating a targeted employer list. This is a pretty simple exercise, and it consists of identifying organizations that you're interested in, listing your key reasons for pursuing each organization, and then just keeping track of the contacts and the networking interactions with your targeted employers. This should help you really hone in on the type of organization and or role that you're most interested in. It's a pretty simple exercise, but it's very useful, and you can find more information about exactly how to do that exercise on Idealist. So I would also encourage you to be intentional and really find your fit. Nonprofit professionals or aspiring nonprofit professionals can really explore job titles in the sector to understand what job title their specific skills and experience, either from school or previous jobs or volunteer experience, what from that may translate to a new role in the social impact space. An interesting way to do this could be dropping your job description or description of a volunteer project or experience that you had into something like ChatGPT, and then also dropping in a job listing that looks interesting to you, and asking ChatGPT to tell you what are these transferable skills between the two, or how might I do something in the workforce, or how might I apply what I learned in this volunteer experience to a paid role. It's pretty interesting, and it does work sometimes, so I suggest giving it a shot. Volunteering intentionally. So choosing volunteer opportunities that allow for whatever gaps you feel like you may have, to allow for those to be filled. So it could be that there are gaps in your network. Maybe there are places you want your network to grow or people that you want to meet. Maybe you don't have enough shareable final products or projects. Maybe you don't have enough things in your professional portfolio. Volunteering intentionally can really help you fill those gaps. Let's see, getting fluent. So learning to speak the same language as the organizations you want to work for, as well as just others in the nonprofit sector in general. This is really important. An example of this is in the nonprofit sector, we tend to say organization rather than company. Often it's supervisor or manager instead of boss. These are all just sort of like social impact isms. Some organizations spell nonprofit with a hyphen, others like Idealist stick to one word. Whatever it is, you'll really want to mirror the values of the sector by mirroring the language of the sector, both in your application materials as well as in conversation. When I'm interviewing somebody for a position at Idealist and they maybe start talking about companies, believe it or not, it actually sets off a bit of an alarm bell for me, because I wonder, do they really understand the sector, and are they able to kind of view things through this nonprofit lens? So next, I want to talk about preparing your resume and cover letter, what to include and what not to include. So what to include in your cover letter? First, if you can, specific names. To whom it may concern does not have to be a deal breaker, but if you have a hiring manager's name, include it. If you don't, try to do some digging online and see if you can determine to whom this particular role may report. Consider addressing it to that person. And if you're not confident that you've found the right person, consider including the name of the person in charge of HR or recruitment. or to whom it may concern is okay too. You'll want to tell a compelling story, but not a life story. So a cover letter is not an invitation to repeat everything on your resume. It's not a space to share your entire life story. You should be using this real estate to create a compelling personal and professional story that will leave the reader thinking that you understand the position, you understand the organization, and that you are the best fit for the job. So I'd recommend keeping it to 4 brief paragraphs, starting with an introduction and a mention of the job, as well as the organization, and a specific reference to show that you understand what they're all about and what they're looking for. Next, I would include a short paragraph about how your current role or academic or volunteer experience has prepared you for the role for which you're applying. In the next paragraph, if you have current side projects or volunteer work or pro bono work that you'd like to highlight, you can use this third paragraph to weave those into your professional story. And finally, I would just wrap it up and say thank you. Next, language that mirrors that of the hiring organization. So we touched on this a little bit already, but does the organization refer to themselves by their full name, or perhaps do they prefer an acronym? Make sure you do what they do. It's definitely important to include the action verbs used in a job description. It's equally important to mirror some of that general nonprofit speak. And of course, you want to make sure that you don't have any errors of any kind in your application materials. Again, you could find some really good resources on Idealist career advice to help you address some common mistakes and catch them and fix them before you send in your application materials. What to include on your resume. Your entire resume doesn't need to be only measurable accomplishments, but it is important to have plenty in there. Make sure that you include any measurable or quantifiable examples of the work that you've done. Passion projects, side hustles, and volunteer experience. So while you don't want to try to pass off unpaid work as paid work, there's definitely a good way to highlight this very legitimate experience. I advise people against formatting a resume in such a way that delegitimizes volunteer experience in any way. Instead, I suggest changing your professional experience section perhaps to just experience or relevant experience, and then including any experience that's relevant to the particular role for which you're applying. Obviously, when you're listing the job title, you'll want to be completely transparent about the fact that the role was maybe a volunteer opportunity or a pro bono opportunity. But don't bury the experience in your resume simply because it wasn't paid work. And then inside baseball and acronyms. So aside from using any acronyms that the hiring organization may use to refer to themselves or they use in the job description, I would try to avoid acronyms and lingo. If I told you that when I finished my year of service with AmeriCorps, I went on to work at CMD for 3 years, thanks to my internship experience at BCM, this is all true, by the way, chances are you'd have no idea what I was talking about. So a note on remote interviews. Some people feel like maybe you're at a bit of a disadvantage by not being in the room with your interviewer because so many of us are used to being in the room. But there are some real advantages that you should not lose sight of, and you should really use them to your advantage. Bringing your notes and taking some notes. So when you are in a remote interview, you can more easily refer to your notes during the interview and take notes. And either way, I always encourage interviewees to take notes and bring notes and not to be shy about it in the first place, whether you're in person or virtual. You get to be a real person. So there's a little more room for that human chit chat when you're in a virtual interview. Is this still a good time for you? How is your day going? Oh, wow, I hear your dog barking. Or is that a chicken in the background? Who knows? I have chickens, so I like to talk about chickens all the time. Take advantage of that easy bit of common ground on which you can relate to your interviewer. You can also have links on deck. So During the interview, if the opportunity presents itself, you can actually maybe pass along a link. So, for example, if you have a passion project that you'd love to highlight, keep the link handy during your interview. And if you're able to steer the conversation in that direction, you can always say something like, "Oh, I'll send you the link now," or "I can share the link right after we wrap up." This is a great way to ensure that you actually get the interviewer's eyes on the work that you're so proud of. And then finally, just consider the possibilities. Because we now have the option to do remote interviews, the net has significantly widened, and I've even seen it happen at Idealist. Organizations who used to be limited in terms of their geographical search have now started to realize that they're opening themselves up to a far wider pool of talented applicants by finding new and innovative ways to offer location and schedule flexibility. So finally, I just want to share some really useful free tools and resources for your social impact job search that you can find on Idealist. So first we have an email-based 4-part interactive course called Designing Your Dream Career. So this interactive guide includes sections on identifying the skills that you need to take that next big step in your career, determine what types of activities and commitments and volunteer opportunities can help you strengthen those skills, tracking your progress in a meaningful way, and finding the right place on your resume or in your cover letter or professional portfolio to include everything you learn along the way, both about yourself and about the social impact sector. This course will allow you to methodically examine your career and where you want to go, and hopefully by the end, you'll have an action plan. So next we have a tool that I really love called Idealist's Perfect Resume Roadmap. So this is a roadmap on how to create your best resume. It includes tips about what to include and what to leave out. And we also have access to a Google Doc template that you can format on your own. Then we have the Nonprofit Salary Explorer. This is really cool. It's a newer tool. I mentioned it in the introduction. This is a nonprofit-specific database of salaries. You just have to answer a few questions, and then you gain access to over 40,000 salaries from across the country, and hundreds of titles as well. So you can use this tool to prepare for a salary negotiation with a new organization, or if you're up for your annual review, or if you're thinking about switching into the nonprofit sector. It's a great resource to see what people are being paid for what job title and in what location. And I think that's it. And we can go back to Jerome now. I think we can answer a few questions. And if you have any more questions about any of the specific things that I mentioned, you can absolutely go to idealist.org, search our resources, search our website. It's all free, and we'd love to see you there.
Great presentation. Before I let you go, Alexis, we received a few questions from our audience during the registration process that I'd like to ask you now. The first question is, what are some low-cost ways to show skill improvements and additions? Free courses, Google seminars?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of free courses and certifications out there. I actually put together a resource with a whole long list of them maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, that list has just grown and grown and grown. So there's a lot. There's Udemy, Coursera, Codecademy, which I think is how you say it, but I'm never sure, edX, Allison, and even YouTube. And if you're maybe a bit further along in your career and you'd like to do some skill development or skills-based volunteering, I would definitely suggest considering opportunities through organizations like Catch a Fire or Taproot that give you the opportunity to lend your professional skills to nonprofits in need.
Our next question is, if I have a few minor mobility issues, should I tell a potential employer about it?
That's a great question. So legally, I believe you can choose to disclose at any time. However, you're not required to disclose unless you want to request an accommodation or other legal protection. But if you do choose to disclose, I think it's just really important that it's at a stage in the process that's comfortable for you. I think my only advice here would maybe be to leave it out of your very initial application materials. I say this for a few reasons, but the simplest reason is most of the time you're not really being put in the position to share quite yet. So I think you can kind of save it for a later conversation. I know it's not the same thing at all, but I also wouldn't include anything about a planned vacation or geographic and location restrictions or scheduling accommodations in my initial application materials.
Last question for you. What's the best way to address gaps in my resume due to my illness?
So I think that's a great question. I think it varies a bit depending on the length of the gap. So for a shorter gap, I'd suggest that unless it was especially formative for any reason, or at least peripherally relevant to the position for which you're applying, I would suggest leaving this out of your application materials. Again, at this stage in the game, you don't necessarily need to answer any questions that aren't specifically being asked to you. For a longer gap, I would say you could challenge yourself to consider any new skills that may have been acquired during that period. You can include those in the relevant skills section of your resume with dates. But just kind of generally speaking, hiring managers, they're astute. They'll see that there's a gap on your resume and they will likely address it in a phone screen or a first round interview. So just be prepared to speak about it honestly and concisely and then move on.
Thank you, Alexis, with idealist.org. We appreciate you being with us. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Melissa Bensuda, an inspiring kidney transplant recipient and dedicated AAKP ambassador from Texas. Melissa is a two-time kidney transplant recipient, and her most recent transplant occurring in October of 2023, so just a year ago. Her journey began after the birth of her third child, which led to her placement on the transplant list in June of 2002. She received her first kidney in 2012 from a deceased donor, allowing her to live dialysis free for almost 5 years. Initially, Melissa underwent in-center dialysis, but after 3 months, she transitioned to nocturnal home hemodialysis. Through 6 weeks of training, she learned to dialyze independently at home every other night, a process that allowed her to receive treatment while sleeping. When her first transplanted kidney failed, Melissa continued her home dialysis routine until receiving her second transplant. Her journey has only strengthened her commitment to advocate for advancements in kidney disease treatments. Alongside raising 3 children and working full time, Melissa is passionate about promoting technology, education, and research to improve outcomes for kidney patients everywhere. Melissa, thank you for being with us today. I have my first question for you is, can you tell us about when you were first diagnosed with ESRD? How did it impact your daily life and your ability to work?
Hi, Jerome. It, being diagnosed really impacted my life in a few different ways. I'd say personally, I was struggling raising 3 small children and didn't really understand what the diagnosis meant to me, certainly in the short term, but mostly in the long term. I didn't really understand how it would change my day to day life. In terms of employment, I was diagnosed with kidney disease kind of early in my career. So I hadn't fully experienced all the things that I wanted to do career wise, such as, learning new technologies, learning about more about account management, client success. So it really kind of took a blow in that I really didn't prepare for being tired every day, not being able to fully be energized for my job each day. And that was a struggle very much in the beginning.
What were your immediate concerns regarding your job after receiving the diagnosis?
So my first concern was, am I even able to work long term? Again, I had lost a lot of weight. I was very lethargic, extremely lethargic. And I really wasn't sure if the workforce was going to be a good fit for me. I had spoken with a number of people who said, you know what, you should just retire. People in dialysis really have a hard time working. And I was in my late 20s at the time, and that just didn't sound like the right song for me. My secondary concern was, if I am able to work, how will I be able to keep a job? And, I work in the financial services industry, so it's a very competitive market. I did not, in my heart, want to quit my job, but then I was very concerned about my performance and making sure that I, didn't miss a lot of days and could actually compete with the rest of my team members and support them as well during that journey. I had concerns about possibly being let go simply because dialysis, at the point that I started dialysis, wasn't the norm for anyone that I knew at my place of employment.
How did you manage balancing your work responsibilities with your dialysis treatment?
Balancing those responsibilities was tough, and it continues to be tough. I was much earlier in my career, and again, being present was important. When I was first started dialysis, I was doing in-center hemodialysis for I would go in the evening shift, and it was difficult because even though I was only doing treatments 3 hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it was the length of time that it took me to get to the clinic to prepare. So I was really almost missing half a day of treatment. And I realized that was not going to work for me career wise or in terms of supporting my family. I was approached by a nurse at the clinic who said, you would be a good candidate for home dialysis. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I said, absolutely. Yes, sign me up. So I went through 6 weeks of training, uh, got approved to move into the home setting, and I started to do dialysis overnight. And my key goal was to not miss out on work, to not miss many activities with my children, and be able to travel, which later became part of my job. That's how I fit things into my schedule. But as I look back, oftentimes I was very exhausted despite doing overnight dialysis. I felt much better, but I would still have to get off the machine in the morning, shower, get kids ready for school, and then head off to work. So those responsibilities were taxing, but I knew it was something that I had to do for the quality of life that was important to me.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot. Were there any adjustments or accommodations that your workplace made to support your treatment schedule?
I was very fortunate to have really strong relationships with my manager and his manager. And I was always very transparent about what was going on with me. And so I didn't really require many accommodations, although there were times where I later in my career would work from home, and they were very supportive of that. And that was primarily because I had built up a reputation to show up, be present, be productive, particularly on the days that I felt really good. So I would kind of almost overcompensate on those days because I knew there were going to be days where, like any, single mom, your kids get sick. And in my case, I could get sick or be hospitalized. So they were very understanding. And I tried to keep those incidents where I was not working to a minimum.
Did you ever consider leaving your job during your treatment? And if so, what motivated you to continue working?
I've definitely thought about leaving my job, and I've been on dialysis off and on for 22 years. And I could say just as recent as the end of last year when I received a transplant that I've considered, is the workforce for me? And it's not because I, um, couldn't perform. It was really that the demands are much higher. It's difficult sometimes to, take off for long periods of time, whether it's for transplant or just some hospitalization that's required, taking time off for doctor's appointments. And so it was really, I'd say, a bit of depression, no, a lot of depression, honestly, and being concerned that I, miss more time or just not be available or able to compete in the market. And so, yes, it's actually a thought that crosses my mind often. But I do have an amazing support system, friends who are in the kidney community who support me and say, "No, don't give up. You've come this far. Things get harder as you get older and the longer you're on dialysis, but you are still very capable of working full time and providing the life for you and your children that you want." And so that's honestly what keeps me going every single day, is wanting my family, my friends, being around them, and experiencing kind of the rest of my journey, if you will.
What personal strategies or routines helped you stay productive and maintain your energy level at work?
Energy levels. Yeah, that's a great topic. I had to be very self, I had to have a lot of self discipline. So it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to take care of myself and do the best that I can. But taking care of myself, as I learned, meant lots of different things at different points in my life. Not only did I have a fairly strict diet, but it was also things like, I may not be able to participate in the family function that weekend, right? So I may be invited to different events. um, the weekends were usually my time to recover, to catch up on chores. And so I've missed a lot of activities and gatherings by choice, simply because I needed to preserve my energy for the week. But for me, it was well worth it. Another thing was just being disciplined about preparation. So you'd also find me on the weekends ironing clothes for the week, getting my kids organized for the week. I really use the weekends to regroup, to ensure that I can minimize any type of unforeseen occurrences during the week that would throw off my schedule. The other thing is I would, exercise when I could. And exercise to me looks much different than someone who maybe goes to Soul Cycle for an hour a day. Exercise for me was walking around the house, walking in the neighborhood, even just doing, if I had to do shopping, trying to walk as much as I could, because I couldn't run a race necessarily. But just as long as I was staying somewhat physical and mobile, that allowed me to keep my energy up as well. But that too was very difficult. There were times where I would come home on Friday night after work and I wouldn't get out of bed until Sunday morning. And the reality was I needed all of Saturday to regroup. And then Sunday I would, get started on those things that I mentioned. I just had to really gauge my energy level and be aware of my body at all times.
Can you share your personal experience transitioning back to work after your kidney transplant?
Sure. So this last transplant from last October was my second. I had a lot of complications, not necessarily with the kidney itself, although it was delayed in functioning. I had severe GI issues. So I ended up being in the hospital for 3.5 months, which is essentially took all of my FMLA. And I had received a transplant out of state, and so for me, the biggest challenge in returning to work was, one, being well enough to make it back home to Texas and somewhat recover, because I was really in survival mode the entire time I was in the hospital. Once I got home, I was still very ill. And knowing that I did not have FMLA, I did return to work, but I was working from home most of that time, starting out with half days and then working my way up to full days after 2 weeks. Uh, Jerome, I really struggled with that. Again, concerned that I may lose my job simply because I had run out of FMLA. I was fairly new to the company. I'd only been there for 5 years at that point. So I did have major concerns about maintaining employment. Fortunately, over time, they were patient with me. Over time, I was able to regain my strength, my mental acuity, and began to contribute full time, which was great. But it was very, very scary. I saw my entire life and way of maintaining life being different based on all of the complications I had in the hospital.
Yeah. What were the biggest challenges to, returning to the workforce post surgery, and how did you overcome them?
So returning to the workforce was difficult. Missing a week or two of work is hard enough, but when you miss 3.5 months, essentially I'd missed an entire quarter of work. Things had changed. Resources had been shifted around. The projects that I had been working on before transplant some of them had been transitioned to others. Some of them were awaiting my return. And so mentally and physically, I was exhausted. I couldn't really work without having to take a nap in the middle of the day. So my lunchtime was spent taking naps to just make it through the rest of the day. And I realized that it came very close to me saying maybe I do need to retire and go on disability. Uh, but my team was very supportive and they really respected my work and were encouraged by all that I had been through, in that I was actually able to return to work. So, along with their support, and again, making sure that I showed up extra when I felt somewhat decent, and that included sometimes working weekends, just to get back up to speed on certain projects, just to become more clear on the goals for the rest of the year professionally. That's how I was able to make it through. But sometimes those strategies are well set, but not executed as well when you feel really, really bad and you've got multiple doctor's visits and things that need to be addressed medically. But with the support of my family helping me out. My mom was here for a large part of that time while I was recovering. So those things were helpful. I guess you could say that my strategy is to equip myself with the village or the community and allow them to help me. I was in a very vulnerable state. And so my strategy was let anyone who wants to help and don't be not being so prideful that I did not allow that to happen.
Now, did your view of work change after transplant? If so, in what ways?
After the experience that I went through, transplant and all, because my transplant really did not fully take, and I'm still doing some maintenance dialysis a few times a month. And so I was depressed, right? I really, we often think, okay, transplant, you're going to feel much better. You're going to bounce back. Things are going to be amazing. And that wasn't my story initially. I feel much better now, but out the gate, it wasn't my story by any means. And so I just really think more about how, I'm sorry, to answer your question about how it's kind of changed my view on working. It actually changed my view in a lot of ways. It reminded me that that experience reminded me that life is very precious. It also reminded me that, work is work, right? And I needed to survive, but at the same time, I was in survival mode. So I couldn't make work my top priority. I had to allow myself to heal and to rest and let time run its course. So I look at a lot of things differently in terms of boundary setting, prioritizing what's important, and being comfortable again with saying, no, I'm not going to take on these things, and really just doing better with managing people's expectations of me. I'm often told, well, you don't look like you're sick, but that's not necessarily the case. I can get very ill, and I've got to prioritize my health in order to do the things that I want to accomplish. So I really have reevaluated life in general and what's important.
So, what advice would you give to others who are navigating kidney disease, a kidney disease diagnosis, while trying to maintain employment?
Jerome, everyone's situation is different. Like I said, I've been extremely fortunate, but I've had many, many days and nights of just being in complete tears and not thinking I can make it. But I encourage those who are considering, working, returning to work, or maintaining their place in the workforce to accomplish it in the way that they can, right? For some, that may mean working full time. It may mean working part time. But I can attest to the fact that had I not been working, I and had something that was gratifying for me and allowed me to experience the things that I wanted to experience in life, like traveling with my daughters for cheer competitions or just traveling, with our family. If I hadn't worked, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish those things. But I also think that working gave me a good mental and social outlet that I otherwise may not have had. So again, I had to oftentimes replace things on the week activities on the weekend with work or with resting. And that was my strategy. But it was worth it in the end for me to see my daughters graduate from college and become professional massage therapists, and just to see my children grow. It's been over 20 years. So this has been their life since pretty much the beginning. And working is possible. Again, it gave me an outlet. It gave me, I created new friend bases. It has been really good, but I'd also say you've got to be self-disciplined. It does require structure, commitment to live, and commitment to doing the things that are required to live. But I've made it work for me, and I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Melissa Bensuda, thank you very much for sharing part of your kidney journey with us today. Very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jerome.
Our next speaker is Leanne Williams, a home hemodialysis patient and passionate AAKP ambassador. A lifelong resident of the greater New Orleans area, Leanne holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in toxicology from the University of Louisiana Monroe, a Master's of Science in Toxicology from the University of Florida, and a Master's in Public Health from LSU Health Sciences Center. She currently serves as the program coordinator for the Federal 340B drug pricing program at West Jefferson Medical Center and works actively within the kidney community, serving as a certified kidney health coach and contributing her expertise as a board member on the Kidney Health Initiative's Patient and Family Partnership Council. Leanne's kidney journey began in 2012 with a diagnosis of acute kidney failure and FSGS, later compounded by a lupus diagnosis in 2014 and ESRD in 2016. After starting with in-center dialysis, she later embraced the flexibility of home hemodialysis in 2017, which has given her more freedom and control over her treatment. Leanne, thank you for being with us today. My first question to you is, how has your kidney failure diagnosis affected your ability to work or your approach to work?
Kidney failure completely affected my approach and ability to work. I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease and crashed into dialysis 1 month before I was set to graduate college. So it completely changed my plans that I originally had after graduating school. What I did instead was, after starting dialysis treatments in center 3 days a week, that fall, I started taking some online classes to see if a master's degree was something that I could pursue. After a successful fall semester that spring, I transitioned to a full-time student and was able to earn a master's degree pretty much online on dialysis, because those 3 days a week that I was in there for my dialysis treatments, I would be on my computer the entire time doing my coursework. After that, about 16 or 17 months of in-center dialysis, I transitioned to home dialysis. Home dialysis opened up an entirely new arena for me because it allowed me to go back to a brick and mortar university and earn a master's degree in public health with a concentration in epidemiology. This degree allowed me to open up my fields and work. When I was in school, I had originally planned to work in the healthcare field, and earning this master's of public health allowed me to get the job that I have now in the healthcare arena. So it isn't the field I had originally planned to go into, but being able to work and pursue that degree while on dialysis opened up the arena for me to at least go into healthcare.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. What role does work or having a job play in your sense of purpose and well-being while managing your kidney failure?
I think being able to work, like I mentioned, gives me the opportunity to feel valuable. Dialysis takes so much out of you, and being diagnosed with kidney failure at a young age, it really is, I hadn't had a chance to even have a career. And so being able to work and have a job in the field I love and, doing something that I love to do in spite of being on dialysis is definitely what I consider one of my biggest blessings.
Now, have you found that staying employed helps you cope with the challenges of living with kidney disease?
Absolutely. Being employed, I get the opportunity to interact with other people of all ages. I'm working, and I, again, have the opportunity to feel like I get the opportunity to contribute to society, do something I love. In my career, I'm helping patients. And so it all comes full circle, despite the challenges and, the hardships. I think that, being able to work helps me give back, in a way. And so for me, it's really important to have that opportunity to, work and give back and use my education that I really worked hard for. And just the interaction, I earned my degree during COVID. So towards the end, everything moved to stay at home. And so for a while, working from home, and it's a different experience, especially for someone that does home dialysis, because now that makes everything at home and no outside interaction. So that being able to just go out and, interact with other people, and even if it's just catching them up and talking about plans for the weekend while we work, I definitely think it plays a big role in my overall mental health and how I'm able to cope with some of the challenges of the disease.
Now, I know you talked about this a little bit, but can you expand a little bit more about how you manage your health, including dialysis treatment, around your work schedule? What were some of the biggest challenges?
Definitely. Some of my biggest challenges, especially as a home dialysis patient and working full time, is that means I have to do dialysis after work, but that I also have a care partner. And so my care partner also works. So my biggest challenge on home dialysis is that while most people are preparing for bed for the night, we're actually starting our dialysis treatment. So by the time we get home, get dinner, and get settled, it's usually around 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock at night, that we're getting on dialysis. And then those treatments, my treatments run about 4 hours. So you're looking at around 2 a.m. local time that we typically are getting off of dialysis and then getting up at 8 a.m. for work. And so I think, and I do treatments 4 times a week. So typically at least 3 of those days is going to be a work day that we're getting off of dialysis at 2 a.m. So I would think that that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But I love it. And like I said, home dialysis gives me the flexibility to be able to work. And I'm grateful for that, even though, it means that my sleep schedule is a little different from most people's schedules.
Yeah, that makes for a very long day. What kind of support, if any, have you received from employers in managing your condition while staying employed?
Great question, Jerome. And as I mentioned, I was on dialysis before I ever started working. And so that was one of the things that I mentioned immediately to my employer was, that I am a dialysis patient. And sometimes there are those rough days where, treatments may lead to, me feeling, extremely fatigued or tired or not feeling well. And I especially experienced that even before I started working. When I still was in my master's program, I would always let my teachers know, if I had to do a treatment sometimes, early morning, and I had class that day, or sometimes I would have a issue with treatment before class, and so I wasn't able to make class. And so I always was grateful that I had understanding professors that understood what I was trying to achieve despite being on dialysis, and that has transitioned into the workplace. My employers have always been very understanding of my health issues, because on top of dialysis, I also have lupus, and so that comes with its own set of issues sometimes. But I'm always open and honest, and letting them know if there are any challenges that I'm facing, if I need extra time. And some days if I need to just rest, I make sure that I let them know that. And just try to keep an open line of communication about what's happening, what I'm feeling. And many people, they know about dialysis, but they don't know what dialysis patients endure, or what happens during a dialysis treatment. So just making them aware of that fatigue, that tiredness. If I have a treatment and I end up sick, and may not be able to come in or work, just keeping them aware.
Now, do you think having a flexible or accommodating work environment is crucial for individuals with kidney failure? Why or why not?
Oh, absolutely, Jerome. Just as I previously mentioned, having a boss that is understanding of my disease and the effect that it has on me is absolutely important. This is something that we can't control. Dialysis is a life-saving treatment, and it's something that we have to do. But we also, many of us still want to work if we can. And, to have that opportunity to work is also just as important to us. And so I think that overall, if you have this opportunity to, work, that I would hope that your boss will be understanding. Of course, there are certain jobs that you may not be able to do just due to the nature of the job. But if you have a job where there are accommodations, where they can be flexible and understanding, and maybe give you an extra 30 minutes, or allow you to be off and have someone to cover for you if you have a rough or bad treatment, just having that understanding from your boss that you are trying your best. And just sometimes treatments just you have bad treatments. I've been on dialysis now for 8 years, 7 years at home, and still some treatments just, bad days happen for everyone. And so having someone that understands the regular things that happen in life, you may have that bad treatment and you may, need time off, or, some extended time, needs to be late or delayed, is so important.
Yeah. And my last question for you, what advice would you give to someone with kidney failure who is worried about balancing work and their health?
My advice will be, you can do it. Time management is something that I have learned in my journey with kidney failure. And I would say it's the thing that has helped me the most. I try to say all the time, I, just celebrated a birthday back in towards the end of September. And, my mantra has always been, these kidneys won't hold me back. And that I try to live my life now as close to a normal 32-year-old as possible. And so it takes a lot of my week is planned in advance, because as a home dialysis patient, they always say, well, what days do you do? And I like to say, my dialysis days aren't set. I base my dialysis schedule around what I have planned for the week. So I have season tickets to our local NBA team, the Pelicans. So, if I have games that week, that means those are nights I can't do treatments. I'm actively involved in my sorority. So, if we have things going on, I can't do treatments those nights. So I have to do a lot of planning to make sure that I have time to work, get those 4 dialysis treatments in, but still also do the things in life that bring me joy.
That's awesome. Great news and great advice. Leanne, thank you for being with us today to share part of your kidney disease journey. We appreciate it. If anyone watching has additional questions for our speakers or about today's webinar that we were unable to get to, please email us at info@aakp.org, noting the webinar title in the email subject line. We're thrilled to announce our partnership with Career Eco virtual events to support a series of upcoming virtual job fairs designed for those looking to enter the job market or change careers. Mark your calendars for the first event on November 13th, with 2 additional fairs scheduled for March 19th of 2025 and November 13th of 2025. Don't miss these opportunities to connect with potential employers and explore exciting career opportunities from the convenience of your home. Visit careereco.com to learn more and register to attend virtually. If you are not already a member of AAKP, we encourage you to join. AAKP offers free membership to patients and their family members, as well as living kidney donors. To become a free member, join online at aakp.org/join or by phone at 1-800-749-2257. To receive all the benefits of membership, please be sure to include your email address when signing up. As an AAKP member, you will be notified about all of AAKP's upcoming events, the latest in our educational program series, and when opportunities arise where your opinions and experiences are needed to help inform innovation, advance care, and make a meaningful impact to improve lives. We encourage you to respond to our flash surveys and other engagement opportunities to help us elevate the independent patient voice and change status quo kidney care. You will also receive a digital subscription to our bi-monthly magazine, AAKP Renal Life, and can select to receive any of our 5 different electronic newsletters, all for just signing up. We also invite you to check out our blog to read some great articles and patient profile stories, and follow us on social media for all the latest news and to keep up on what's trending. AAKP is dedicated to helping kidney patients across the disease spectrum understand their condition and take control of their healthcare. We are proud to offer a variety of resources for both patients and care partners. By visiting our website at aakp.org and clicking on the AAKP Store button at the top of the homepage, you can find a variety of educational brochures and online tools to order or download free of charge, including titles such as The Conversation Starter, Questions to Ask Your Healthcare Team About Choosing the Right Treatment for You. That's a brochure. Or Coping, Living, and Thriving with Kidney Disease. You can also order materials by phone. Join us for the 7th Annual Policy Summit on November 20th at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. This year's event will bring together key policymakers, industry leaders, and patient advocates with options for both in-person and virtual participation. Registration is open. Secure your spot today. And finally, you can also visit our YouTube channel to watch a number of great presentations and webinars, all available on demand from our previously held events and programs, as well as 2024 programs as they occur. All presentations from our recent national patient meeting have recently been released. We would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our webinar speakers, Alexis Perota, Melissa Benzuda, and Leanne Williams, for graciously participating in today's webinar event. Their expertise and insights greatly enriched the discussions and provided valuable information. And thank you to everyone who joined us.